the fire sprinklers are going off.
Feeling good? You hyped? You got the
I'm
energy?
hyped. Oh god, I can't move too fast. Hi, my name's Abby, and today we're talking about Hocus Pocus. I'm back to give you the spoops. So, the year is 1693. Thackeray Binks sees, oh shoot, my sister's missing. And notices at the very same time that there is some there's some smoke rising from the woods, which is a very sure sign that some witches are conjuring some witchcraft. He notices that there's a woman luring his sister Emily into the woods, who he's like, oh no. And he tells his best friend Elijah, go gather the townsfolk. So Elijah goes to gather the townsfolk, and he gives chase and follows this woman who's luring his sister into the woods. Eventually he catches up to them, and just as his sister is being taken into this cottage in the woods, Thackeray is there. And he's like, oh god, no, because his sister's being taken into this cottage in the middle of the woods. So the cottage in the woods belongs to the Sanderson sisters, Winifred, Mary, and Sarah. They have taken Emily because they're old and gray, and they need the life force of a child in order to sustain their youth. Thackeray can't stop Emily from taking the potion and having her life force drained. And at a certain point, Thackeray calls Winifred a hag. So instead of killing him as he had originally planned, as she had originally planned to do, Winifred decides to curse him, turns him into a black cat, and curses him with immortality, so that Thackeray can live the rest of his life until the end of time with the weight of the guilt of not being able to save his sister.
You think he has 9 lives?
Probably, yeah. At least 9 lives. Just as Thackeray is transformed into the immortal black cat, the townsfolk, led by Thackeray's best friend Elijah, barge into their cottage and essentially hang the sisters on the spot. As the noose is around their neck, Winifred casts one last spell that she and her sisters can be summoned and brought back from the dead on Halloween night. As long as it is a full moon, Halloween night, and they are summoned by the black flame candle as long as it is lit by a virgin. 300 years later, we're still in Salem, Massachusetts. Max Dennison, his parents, and his little sister Danny have recently relocated to Salem from their fancy hometown in Los Angeles. The scene kind of opens up. It's Max and his classmates on the last, period of school for the day on the eve of Halloween. The Sanderson sisters legend is being told. Max makes his opinion very known that he thinks Halloween is a conspiracy started by the candy companies to sell kids more candy. He's immediately put in his place by Allison, the most beautiful and popular girl in the school, who Max also has a crush on. School winds down, Max asks Allison for her number, and she super rejects him, major bummer. And he's kind of dejected. He's walking his sister home from school, and as if his day could get any worse, he runs into the 2 school bullies Jay, and Ice. And Ice, I know, Ice, doesn't he have ice, like, shaved in the back of his head? Like, I have... Hollywood! Like, I have an undercut, but I don't have anything cool shaved into it anymore.
I would get ice.
I used to have a spider web shaved into it, but I'm not cool anymore, so I don't. Jay and I steal Max's shoes, and he's like, fucking dope.
They were pretty cool shoes.
They were pretty cool shoes. But anyways, he makes his way home, and he thinks his day is going, like, pretty badly. But his little sister Danny is super hyped because it's Halloween. She's gonna dress as a witch, and she's like, Max, you're taking me trick-or-treating. And he's like, no, I'm not. And Danny throws a fit, and his parents are like, Max, you're taking your sister trick-or-treating because we're adults and we're going to a party. So have fun with that. So Max is like, whatever. He takes his little sister Danny trick-or-treating. They go around to a bunch of different houses, and eventually they end up at Allison's house, which, as we mentioned, is the most popular and beautiful girl that Max has a crush on. And they walk inside, they meet up with Allison. Danny mentions that Max likes her yabos, because Danny is like...
Yabos.
is Danny like 8 or 9?
I think so.
She has no chill, is the main point. She's like, yo, Allison, Max likes ya yabos. And Max is just sitting in the corner like,
about him all the time.
what are you doing? But they pass by all of that. And Danny starts to tell Allison that she's super interested and curious about the legend of the Sanderson sisters and wants to know more. And Allison's like, hey, just to let you know, my mom used to run the Sanderson Museum, which was actually built inside of the cottage.
There you go.
That's the word. That the Sanderson sisters... I'm really thirsty. Allison's like, my mom ran the museum inside the cottage that the Sanderson sisters lived in. But they had to shut it down because, like, hella spooky stuff kept happening inside of the museum. So it's not open anymore. Once Max learns that Allison and her Yabo's mom owned not the Black Flame Candle, ran the museum, he's like, take us there. And, whatever, they go to the museum in the middle of the night. It's all off limits and spooky and stuff. And as soon as they get inside, he's like, oh, this candle's dope. He sets his sight on the Black Flame Candle. And Allison's like, don't light it. But he's like, I'm gonna do it anyways, because all of this superstition is just a bunch of hocus pocus. And so he lights the Black Flame Candle, and the second that the flame on the candle turns black, Max is like, I have f***ed this up majorly badly. This is a bad thing. Danny essentially, once again, has no chill and is like, oh, the Black Flame Candle was lit by a virgin, so this is a bad thing. Called out. Super embarrassing.
He's also like 12, so.
I mean, I was in high
15,
school when
I
I
don't
was.
know.
He's like 16. I'm gonna say. I'm just gonna put that out there. Whatever. So Max lights a Black Flame Candle, realizes he's majorly screwed up, and the house starts shaking and rocking back and forth because the Sanderson sisters are now resurrected, and they enter their home. They're super excited to be home, and even more excited when Mary's like, ooh, I smell some children. And they figure out quickly where Danny is hiding. There's a whole scuffle that takes place. The Sanderson sisters are trying to get little Danny into their crockpot? Their cauldron. Max gets dazed by their powers. Allison manages to smack one of them over the head with like a frying pan or something. But amidst all this scuffle, Max sets off the fire sprinklers in the museum, which is their home. They are subdued when a black cat jumps through the window. The fire sprinklers are going off, and the sisters fear that the fire sprinklers are the burning rain of death. So they're taken up with thinking they're gonna melt, like the Toto witch, whatever her name is, the Wicked Witch of... I'm melting! They're preoccupied, essentially. The kids follow this black cat out of the cottage, and they manage to swipe the sister's spellbook on the way out. Kids are a little weirded out by the fact that this cat is talking to them, as I figure we all would be, but they managed to make it out of the cottage.
I feel like it'd be cool.
I'd like a talking cat, but I can't have cats because you're allergic to them.
I'd make do for talking.
Yeah, that's fair. So the kids follow the cat despite how weirded out they are by the fact that he talks. And he leads them to a graveyard. To the grave of a man named Billy Butcherson, who is Winifred's long-dead lover. She not only poisoned him, but she sewed his mouth shut because she found out that he was not only seeing him. He was not only seeing her at the time, but had feelings for her very own sister, Sarah, the hot blonde witch. Sarah Jessica Parker, who played a witch named Sarah because apparently she couldn't remember her own character's name. Anyways, Winifred poisoned him and killed him and sewed his mouth shut. And this cat leads them to this grave to illustrate the point that they are mean and nasty witches.
Witches straight up suck.
These witches straight up suck! So this cat leads them to the grave because he wants to illustrate that these witches are sus. And Allison in her mind is like, oh my god, this must be Thackeray Binks. And Thackeray confirms, yeah, I'm Thackeray Binks, by leading all the kids to his sister Emily Binks' grave. And he's like, yeah, I've been guarding the black flame candle from idiots like Maximilian for 300 years. Back at the cottage, since Max set the sprinklers off, and the witches were like, oh, this is the burning rain of death. They realize it's not the burning rain of death, it's just water, and they're a little pissed about it. So they decide to use Mary, the witch who looks like this. They decide to use Mary's ability to smell out kids to follow the kids. And they walk outside of their cottage. And as soon as they reach like the main road, they're scared to death by this fire truck that shows up with all of its just lights and sirens going. So they're like, no, we're gonna fly there. And they go back inside of their cottage, grab their broomsticks to fly over the top of the cemetery. And what was that? Ghosts. They fly on their broomsticks over the graveyard that the kids and Thackeray are in, and, you know, Thackeray showed them Billy Butcherson's grave. And they bring Billy Butcherson back to life as a zombie. And basically they escape by whacking Billy Zombie's head right off like a ping pong ball. And they escape into the sewer to get away from Billy and the witches. So because the children have escaped into the sewer, Mary is no longer able to track them by smell, and they're walking through the town of Salem. And they're scared because the second they hit the road, a bus pulls up and they're like, what the hell is this?
What the what?
What the what? But they get onto the bus and like minutes later, they're just having a good old time and Sarah is sitting on the bus driver's lap.
She gonna get it.
She gonna get it. And driving the bus through Salem, just, I don't even know if she knows how to drive. But the
She's
kid...
been gone for 300 years, so probably not.
She's like, I don't know, I'm just gonna drive this
I don't
bus.
think she's got a driver's license.
No, probably not. She probably didn't go through like the DMV to get a license to drive the bus.
Probably not.
But she's driving through the sound of not the sound of Talem, the town of Salem. And she accidentally, as the kids emerge from the sewer, runs over Binks. And all of the kids are like, oh my god. They're like super sad because they're like, well, my cat spirit guide is gone now. But he's cursed with immortality, so he looks like a deflated balloon and then he reinflates. And he becomes a cat again. And they continue they continue on their way. Whatever. Mary is like, I smell so many children right now. So they pull the bus over and let the bus driver be on his way. And they get off the bus and they're walking around and they're like, I don't understand why I smell so many children, but all of these very small people who are the size of children look like adults and they're in different costumes. And they're very confused. And then they run into a man eventually who's dressed like Satan. And they're like, oh my god, my dark lord, how may I serve you? Master, I love you. How may I serve you? What can I do? They quickly realize that this adult man is very much not Satan. And they come to the conclusion like, oh my god, our very special All Hallows Eve, it's not like a sacred holiday anymore. It's just a time for children's merriment. And they're a little upset about that. And on top of all of this, where their sacred holiday has been like bastardized essentially, now their brooms are missing and presumed stolen.
I love the bus driver.
I love the bus driver.
Boppo, I'm in trouble.
Oh, sit on my lap, sexy lady, and drive this bus. I know you don't have a driver's license, but
He does not care.
take this large vehicle and do what you will. So the witches end up picking up Max, Danny, and Allison's and Binks' scent again, and they follow them to where the kids, Max and Danny, are trying to warn their parents about what's going on. Winifred waltzes into this dance at a high school where their parents are partying it up, dressed like Madonna and whatever.
He was Dracula.
Was he? Yeah, a vampire of some sort, and Madonna with her cone bra on. And Winifred gets up onto the stage and starts singing a song. I put a spell on you. And
Great scene.
yeah, right? And essentially they curse everybody at the dance to dance until they die. And the kids aren't able to convince their parents that anything's going on. So they come up with this ingenious plan. They're like, we're gonna lure the witches into the kiln of this high school where the dance is taking place, and they're gonna burn them. So they lure them into a room playing a boombox that I think like Spanish music is coming through, but Max essentially poses as like a game show host and he's like, oh my god, Winifred, Mary, and Sarah are the contestants on our game show. Lure them into this kiln. And they're like, perfect, everything is going to plan. They get the witches into the kiln. And afterwards, they realize that the kiln didn't really do anything to the sisters. It like barely singed their clothing, let alone like actually killed them. So they're like, well, we thought our plan was going great, but apparently it's actually not. So the The witches survive being killed. They make it out alive. They're like just barely singed. But even despite surviving, they're still outwitted and they've lost the scent of Max, Danny, and Allison. They're like, well. They trudge back home all mopey and they know that the power of a black flame the candle.
Mhm.
It's only gonna sustain them. My throat's really dry. The flame's only gonna keep them alive for like one night. And they're like, we gotta lure one child and eat this child or take their life force or whatever.
Child stew.
Baby stew. That sounds awful. Fuck. The candle's only gonna keep them alive for one. Sorry. No, I'm good. The candle's only gonna keep them alive for one night. And so they have to eat a child before the end of the night, otherwise they're gonna die. So they trudge back to their house. Oh, there it is. And Winifred's like, I don't remember the spell. So she like mournfully calls out to her spell book. Okay. She mournfully calls out to her spell book. Like, spell book, tell me the potion because I don't remember it by heart. And the spell book's like, aight. And it's like across town and it like shoots up a beam of light into the air. And the sisters are like, oh, yeah, I can find the spell book. But God. So like, oh, yeah. And they get on, not their regular broomsticks. They take like a regular broomstick and a mop. Ugh. And a vacuum cleaner. And they ride the vacuum cleaner across town. I just really want to be a witch riding a vacuum cleaner.
It's that modern day witch.
Can I ride a Tesla through there across town?
Riding like a Dyson.
Ride a Dyson and a Moonbrop.
Roomba.
Not a Roomba, I meant to say
Ride
Roomba.
the Roomba. A Roomba?
Across town to get the spell book. And in the process, they somehow managed to pick up Danny and Binks. And now that they have a little baby child and a cat, Sarah, the only hot witch out of the three, is like, oh, I'm like confident that we're gonna like pull this off.
Did you eat burps?
So she gets on her accoutrement that she's riding through the town. Whatever she's riding, I don't know. She ends up riding through the sky, singing her siren saint or whatever, just fancy song, and lures all the kids of Salem, Massachusetts to their house. So the witches have kidnapped Danny and Binks. And at this point they have Danny tied firmly to her chair. And they're finishing their sex potion or whatever. And Danny's like able to resist ingesting it for long enough until Max gets there to save her. And he saves her by convincing the
Sanderson sisters.
the Sanderson sisters. The Sanderson sisters. He tells them the sun's already risen. It's not Halloween Eve anymore. And he saves Danny. And he takes her back to the graveyard where Billy Butcherson is where he's buried. Because it's hallowed ground, so the witches can't walk on it. And he takes her back there. And the witches get on their non-broomstick accoutrement flying machines and float over the graveyard. And they're like, Billy, kill these motherfuckers. And Billy's like, and he grabs Max's pocket knife out of his pocket knife and cuts open the parts of his mouth that are stitched together. And basically is like, nah, Winifred, please go directly to hell, and like insults her. So Billy Butcherson has already decided that he's teamed up with the kids and not Winnie Sanderson, because like her, she poisoned him and sewed his mouth shut. And so the kids are back in the graveyard, and Billy's like, Danny, you're a tiny human. Hide inside my open grave. And Allison is like, I'm gonna sprinkle some salt around here to keep it extra safe, because like salt, witches can't touch salt, right? It will like hurt them. And there's a scuffle, and Winifred knocks Billy's head off his body. And Danny is like so torn up about this. She's like not okay with Billy just like his body like looking for his head. Yeah, looking for his head. So she like hops out of the grave and helps Billy find his face and stuff. And Winifred like takes this opportunity to like scoop Danny off the ground and try to force her to drink the rest of the potion so that the sisters can take not Billy. Said it earlier. She can take Danny's life force out of her. But Binks, the hero pussy of the evening, like whacks Winifred with like a branch or something and makes her drop the potion and is like, I'm gonna smash this shit if you don't let Danny go. And Winifred is like, I'm gonna smash this baby child if you don't let my shit go. So they're kind of like at an impasse. But Max at the last minute decides like, I'm 16, but I'm also a motherfucking hero. So hand me that potion, Binks, and he drinks it. And Winifred's like, you're a god fool for sacrificing yourself for not Winifred, for Danny. Why are you sacrificing yourself for your sister? You're an idiot. And he's already drunk the potion, and so Winifred is like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna like inhale your life force and you're gonna die. So while this is all going down, the other two sisters, Sarah and Mary, are on the ground. Danny, Allison, and Billy managed to slingshot the other two sisters and just yeet them off the face of the earth a little bit, couple 50 feet in the air, using the cord from the vacuum that Sarah was riding. And like the gust of wind that happens while these two sisters are being blonked into the air knocks Winifred like off of her balance, and she falls into the ground. And she's like a determined ass. And she keeps crawling towards Max to like suck up his life force. Because she wants to be young and beautiful again. Which, like, I mean, don't we all?
Seriously?
But now she is... Oh god, there's so many Cheez-Its. She is Cheezums. We're not affiliated with any specific
Brand of cheese cracker.
brand of cheese cracker. Oh god, I dropped one. She's like, no, I still want your life juice. So she crawls into the cemetery, realizes she's on hallowed ground, and ends up turning into stone. And I mean, Max has already convinced her that the sun's coming up, so all of the witches are already on high alert, but the sun's actually coming up now, and Winifred turns into stone, but they all get touched by the sun, and they end up basically exploding and turning into nothing and just kind of like poofing away. So they disappear, and Danny runs over to Max, and she's like, I can't believe you would sacrifice yourself for me. And Max is like, you're my sister, dumbass. Like, of course I would. Like, it's my job to do that. So they hug, and they exchange I love yous. And Billy Butcherson is heading back off to his grave. They're like, all right, sleep tight, Billy. Like, I hope you have, like, a peaceful slumber now that your been like reconciled or whatever. So that's taken care of. Billy's back in his grave. And then the thing about Binks. Danny runs with her little feet over to Binks, and he is not breathing. And she's crying just the same as she was when Binks originally got run over by Sarah, like grinding on the bus driver when she was like driving it earlier, and he like inflated like a balloon again. She's crying. God, I keep dropping my crackers. She's crying, but they realize Binks's curse has been broken. And so now he is able to be at peace. He's not immortal anymore. And he links up with his sister and flies into the sky on a Roomba or a ghost. They're Roombaing into heaven together, and they're reunited, and he doesn't have to be alive anymore. Curse is broken. The very same thing with Max and Danny's parents. Like, the curse is broken. They're not dancing until they die anymore, so they can go home. It's great. So everything's kind of hunky-dory. The scene closes out with Jay and Ice Jay and Ice, who are the bullies. They're the Billies who were from the earlier in the movie. Oh my god. They're the Billies who were from earlier in the movie, who stole Max's feet. His shoes. The shoes off. They took his shoes off his feet. They're... Because at one point in the movie they run across the witches. Sanderson witches. And I think it's Jay, was like, you're an ugly chick. So they put him in a bird cage, and they're now in the bird cages. And basically they're singing like row, row, row your boat, because they have nothing else to do, because they're now in a bird cage. They're in a cage for birds. They're in a cage. They're in a bird cage at the Sanderson sisters' cottage, singing row, row, row your boat. And the scene's kind of fading out. It's like Man in the movie. But the spell book is there, and ominously, it opens its eye like this. And starts looking at them. So that's like the end of the story. Or is it?
Spooky.
Spooky. And that's the end of Hocus the Pocus. Happy Halloween! I hope you have the spookiest weekends of your lives. Because I love you.